Now, what do you do with convicted jihadists? As the terror threat rises in France, the government has been struggling with this very question. Earlier this year, the Prime Minister decided to test a new idea: separate extremists from other inmates so that they can't spread their ideology in prison. That's currently being tested out in a penitentiary near Paris. But the plan is already getting mixed reviews from lawyers and prison workers alike.
Not a week goes by without another jihadist returning to France. In recent years, 1,000 citizens have left French shores to fight in Iraq or Syria. Around 100 of them have already come back. 76 of those are being investigated for links to terrorism. All await their trial behind bars, with the fear they will stay there once sentenced. But what should be done with these detainees who risk ideologically contaminating their fellow prisoners? French Prime Minister Manuel Valls has already said he wants to roll out the isolation of radical Islamists in prisons.
Before the end of the year, and based on the experiences of the prison in Fresnes, the monitoring of these detainees who are considered to be radicalized will be organized in special areas set up in our prisons and detention centers.
Adeline Hazan is a prison inspector and has come to the remand center in Fresnes, France's second largest prison, to see how the regrouping of Islamist radical prisoners is being done. Around 20 of them have been segregated there. She believes such measures fall in a legal gray area.
This measure creates a new form of detention which has no legal status. It also seems to me to present a potential danger. It forces people together who don't have the same level of radicalization, and you can be sure that more radical people will indoctrinate weaker inmates, leaving radicalized people confined together, inmates who might have connections with terrorist networks. All this is bound to have the effect of a pressure cooker ready to explode.
For Mrs. Hazan, this might look like a good idea, but it really isn't.
The overcrowding, lack of work, poor living conditions and lack of activities in our prisons are a fertile ground for radicalization and fundamentalism, especially when dealing with fragile minds and those under the shock of being imprisoned. Such persons often search for protection, someone they can look up to. They become easily indoctrinated.
Meanwhile, in the union section of another prison, Fleury-Mérogis, which is the biggest in Europe, staff complain about the lack of resources, but above all, the absence of training.
We're going to have guys who've recently left or are about to leave Syria. How will we know if they're indeed radicalized when we have no means to evaluate them, especially when some of them come back traumatized with what they've seen? If they end up back in prison, how can we evaluate all of this?
For the prison guards, there's another problem. If these convicted radical Islamists are to serve their time in proper isolation facilities, this means each one will have an individual cell. Considering how serious the prison overcrowding problem is in France, this would almost be akin to a VIP treatment.
There comes a point when this might be perceived as a special status, something that brings more benefits than being just a normal detainee. I can imagine some inmates posing as radical Islamists so that they can be relocated to these special detention blocks.
We now meet with attorney Marie-Alix Canu-Bernard. She used to be Ahmedi Koulibaly's lawyer before he became involved in terrorist activities. Koulibaly is the gunman who committed the terrorist attack in a Paris kosher supermarket in January. She saw how prison changed her client in a negative way.
I think the French prison system, as it exists today, isn't providing any solutions. Just look at the very low proportion of delinquents who actually walk out of prison with the intent to make amends and reintegrate into society. Prison should be a place where they can receive support and guidance, a place where they're given the incentive to change.
France's prison system is in urgent need of upgrading and reform. As it stands today, it's become a place that too often breeds criminality, strengthens antisocial mindsets, and provides amplification to the recruitment propaganda of radical Islam.
We're going to take a very short break. Do stay tuned to France 24. We're back with more world news right after this.